Welcome back. This afternoon, you're listening to the Todd Laborowitz Show, Real Estate Radio on Salem Broadcast Network, WRC 1260 AM. I'm your host, Todd Laborowitz, and we're speaking with Jim Musgrave, who's a financial and wealth advisor with Research Financial Strategies. He's specializing in retirement planning, money management, and 401ks. He's a very smart guy. Welcome, Jim.
It's great to be here, Todd.
Thanks. Well, let's get into it right away. When you're saving for college or retirement while paying off your debt, it can kind of be overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you meet a client for the first time, where do you start with them?
That's a great question, Todd.
Because they must be scared of you.
There's typically a reason why they meet with a financial advisor. There's typically an issue that they have to deal with. And so it's my job as an advisor is to understand what their issue is. And so I'll ask questions like, for example, Todd, what's important about money to you? It's an open-ended question that gets people talking. I also may ask the question, hey, Todd, listen, if we were sitting in this room 3 years from today, what would have to happen both personally and professionally for you to feel that you're on track? And it gets people thinking, okay, well, in 3 years, I want to do this and this and this. So it's my job as an advisor is to understand what's going on in their head. The second thing is that I'm going to take a snapshot of their finances. We'll look at their investments, their insurance, their taxes, the estate. And then ultimately, we're going to create a financial roadmap to kind of help them with that issue. So you're right. There's a lot of things that somebody could be going through, but you really have to kind of segment them out and kind of work on them on an individual basis as well, and then come up with a comprehensive plan.
So you listen to what their needs are.
Yes.
And their wants, obviously. And then you create that financial roadmap.
Correct. And there's a lot of tools that we can use to do that. For example, I have a blueprinting exercise that you can get right on my website, which helps you go through basically soul searching. What are your values? What's important to you? And it kind of helps you figure out what do you want to do with the rest of your life.
What's your website?
It's just jimmusgrave.com. It's just real simple. We also have a income and expenses worksheet that I've mentioned before on the show that helps people figure out their cash flows.
Yeah, you got a lot of feedback on that.
Yeah. So, a number of callers called in. I sent them that email.
Very nice. Well, you also specialize in retirement planning.
Mm-hmm.
And what are some of the things that our listeners can do today to prepare for retirement, even though they're probably terrified to even look at where they're at?
Retirement planning, it's always a balance between living in the moment and spending stuff on today and also saving for the future. And so, people really, they have two questions. The question is, when can I retire? And what do I have to save in order to maintain my standard of living in retirement? And the answer to that question is that when you have enough income from different sources, that could be Social Security, could be your investments, could be a pension, could be real estate rental properties. Once you have enough income from these different sources to fulfill your standard of living in retirement, that's when you can retire. So the question is, well, how do I know? Well, the next thing you have to do is actually have to figure out your retirement gap. So what is the retirement gap? The retirement gap is the difference between what you have right now in savings and different income sources to what you're going to need in the future. And the way that you figure out that retirement gap is that, again, you gather all your investment statements, you figure out your estimates for Social Security, for your pensions, all these different income sources. You plug it into a calculator, and it's going to tell you, hey, Todd, you need to save X amount of dollars per month to get to the certain level. And so that's really the process. I don't care if you're a millionaire or you're just getting started. You have to understand what you need to be putting away today in order to reach those goals in retirement.
It's fascinating information, but it's not just a calculator. I'm sure you have these high-tech spreadsheets.
And the thing is that you can do a Google search for retirement calculators. You can go on finra.org. There's a bunch of just Google financial calculators, retirement calculators, and you can do it. And I've been to a bunch of them. There's a difference between doing that and also having the financial planning software that we have that goes into a lot more detail. But at least that stuff on Google will help you, kind of get in the ballpark.
Perfect. So with a retirement, people at all ages need to review their retirement.
Absolutely.
What are some roadblocks that you're seeing that people are having to come in to talk?
Yeah, depends on kind of where you are in life. In D.C., it's expensive to live here. And so you may have some people who, maybe have lower paying jobs and they don't want to put away $25 or $50 a pay to retire. So there may be a thing where I can't afford it. I think my biggest competition to actually meet with somebody is competing with your life. If you've got kids, you're a chauffeur, you're taking them to your practice, you have all these different events, and to carve out an hour to meet with an advisor is tough sometimes just because with scheduling. But I think the biggest mistake people make when it comes down to the retirement is just not making it a priority. It's always something that people just kind of push off. They just say, I'll put in $100 a month in my 401k and think you're done. That's not the way to do it.
So can you share with our listeners a story of how someone came to you and you were able to make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, had a client did a financial plan. He was actually a federal employee, and he wanted to retire in 10 years. And so, again, going through that financial planning process, especially with federal employees, their benefits, are great. They have all sorts of insurance. They have the TSP, but they also have their pensions, which can also be pretty complicated. So one of the things that we did for the client was I have financial planning software specifically for federal employees that actually help you calculate your pension options. And that's something that you definitely need to talk to an advisor about because it's very hard to do it on your own. So as a result of that, we were able to say, hey, we need to save this much. We were able to retire at this date. And it was a success story.
Perfect. Well, by the way, if you're just tuning in, I have with me Jim Musgrave, Financial and Wealth Advisor with Research Financial Strategies. I'm your host, Todd Laborowitz, and you're listening to Salem Broadcast Network, WRC 1260 AM. Well, Jim, you mentioned federal employees. Mm-hmm. Can you share with our federal employee listeners more about the federal benefits and some tips for those who are preparing to retire soon?
Yeah, for people who are going to be retiring, let's say, within 5 years, I highly recommend and encourage you to attend all the workshops. There's a bunch of educational workshops that the government offers to the employees, whether it's on the TSP or the pension and all these different things. Educate yourself. Go to these things and learn how they work, okay? When it comes down to the actual pension options themselves, so you can retire at age 62 if you've got 5 years of service. You can certainly retire earlier than that if you've got more time. But let's say we look at age 62. The difference between retiring at 62 and let's say pushing that off to full Social Security age, let's say 67, can be massive. And in the case that I was talking about, the client would be making or receiving in their pension just under $35,000 at age 62. But if he had waited at age 67, he'd be getting over $45,000. So the longer that you wait, obviously, the more you're going to receive in your pension. You're not going to go into the your investments as quickly, and you're able to just kind of sustain that much longer.
Well, let's talk about that because you said if they wait a little bit longer, they can get more money from their pension, which they worked hard for.
Right.
What happens if that person, God forbid, passes?
Great question. So there's 3 different pension options for federal employees. You have what we call the basic annuity, and so that's going to give you the most amount of money in retirement. Okay, so the advantage of that is that if you choose that option, that's the maximum you're going to get. If you live to age 100, that's great. You've beat the actuarial odds, and you got a ton of money over your retirement. The worst case scenario is that you receive your first pension check and you die the day after, okay, all the money that you kind of put into that pension system, it just goes back into the general account, and your beneficiaries get nothing. There's no beneficiary on the basic annuity. So that's the worst case. So you can choose that, but just beware that, if you pass away earlier than you anticipate, that could be problematic for your heirs and your spouse, okay? You also have 2 pension options. You actually have a 50% survivor and a 25% survivor. Now, when you take one of the survivor options, you're going to have a reduced amount of pension per month, and so you're going to take some reduction in that pension. And go back to your question. So, what happens if you take one of the survivor options? Your pension dollars go down, and then your spouse dies before you. Okay, now you just took a hit of tens of thousands of dollars of stuff that you'll never get. And so that could be that's one of the things that you have to take into consideration. One of the tools that we've used in the past is, and again, it's going to depend on the individual, but one of the strategies is that you could take the basic annuity and buy a life insurance policy. So if you pass away, the beneficiary gets the death benefit, which would hopefully be enough to make up for the future pension dollars. And if your spouse passes away before then again, you can change the beneficiaries on that. So those are some of the things that we can do.
Well, one last question before we wrap up on this topic is the pension. Someone that's working for the government, let's say they don't talk to a financial advisor. Is it mandatory for them to sit down and check off the box, or do they get something in the mail that they need to check the box off?
No, typically it's like you want to retire, you're going to go to OEM and you're going to get the forms and you're going to do it. And hopefully you're going to go to one of these classes to teach you how to, about the different pension options. So you don't have to sit down with an advisor, but it's highly advisable that you do.
Wow. It's almost like they should require an advisor to talk to you.
Yeah,
Well, Jim Musgrave, he's our financial and wealth advisor with the show, with Research Financial Strategies. And today was about retirement, saving for college, retirement, and paying off your debt, and also pensions, which are amazing. Well, Jim, thanks for having those topics covered. If you have any questions, please go to our website, toddlaborowit.com. That's TODDLABOR, like a woman going in labor, WIT.com. And look up Jim Musgrave, and he'll be happy to assist you if you have any questions and meet with you. Well, coming up next, we're going to have part 2 of Jim Musgrave. We're going to be talking about investments and the market risk. Market's going up, it's going down. How do you protect yourself?
That's right.
He's got the inside scoop on that as well. We'll be back after these messages.